Good day, class. Our topic for today is genetic information and non-Mendelian inheritance. But our focus has something to do with chromosomes, gene, and DNA. Here are the learning objectives. First, describe chromosome. Second, differentiate gene from a DNA according to structure and location. And lastly, identify the components of the DNA molecule. But before we move on to the deeper discussion, let's have this think about it question. Now, same with other video recorded discussions, what I want you to do for the meantime is to remember this think about it question. The question is, what might happen to the organism if one of the compositions of DNA was damaged or altered before it will be inherited? So again, don't be in a hurry answering this question. So what I want you to do is to remember this, and this will be answered at the end of the video recorded discussion. So don't forget to type your explanation in the comment section below so that you can earn additional recitation points. Now, from what you've learned during grade 8, chromosome is an important structure which enables our information, genetic information, to pass to the next generation. And this happens during cellular division. It can either be through mitosis or meiosis processes. Now, let's take a look on this illustration. This is the typical picture of a eukaryotic chromosome structure. What we're after with this illustration is for us to recognize the composition of a chromosome from the smallest going to the larger perspective. Okay? Now, the chromosome is made up of a strand, which we call as DNA. Okay, so this is purely made up of DNA strands. And this DNA strand, as you can see from the illustration, this DNA strand coils on this bead-like structure, which we call as histone or histones. So these are bead-like structures, a type of protein called histones. So DNA strand, which is double helix. Later you will know the reason why this is double helix. Coiled on a protein called histone. And this is now we call a combination of your DNA strand and your protein called histone as your nucleosome. So nucleosome. Now again, DNA strand coiled on a protein called histone. So we call that in general, okay, as your nucleosome. So these nucleosomes packed together, same with this one, as you can see from the illustration. And this now forms your chromosome. Okay, this forms your chromosome. Now again, basic composition of your chromosome is the DNA. Okay, and this DNA, now this strand of this structure, strand-like structure, coils on a protein called histone. And once we form a structure like this, from what you've seen from the illustration, this is now called as nucleosome. So packed nucleosomes are now what your chromosome is made of. Okay? Another thing that you have to remember in terms of this structure, so your eukaryotic chromosome is found inside the nucleus of a cell. Okay? And also, each segment of this DNA strand is what we called your gene. Okay, each strand of your each segment rather of your DNA strand is what we called gene, and that gene is responsible for a certain trait. Okay, so this segment, this portion of a DNA may be responsible for the color of your eye, and this another segment or section of your DNA molecule could be responsible for your height. So again, gene are segments, or genes are segments of your DNA strand. Now, we're done with the structure from DNA. Coiled on histones becomes coiled on histones becomes your nucleosome, and then moving on to a larger structure which we call now chromosome. Let's go ahead and recognize their function. Let's start with chromosomes. So that is the bigger view of this combinations of the smaller components. Okay, so this structure, chromosomes carry the hereditary material that is passed on to the next generation, as mentioned earlier. So everything, all information about us humans are stored in this structure which we call chromosomes. Okay, so later we're going to further intensify that part. Now, DNA, okay, that is the strand, okay, coiled on your bead-like structures protein called histones. The function of that is to carry genetic information. Okay, these strands of DNA carry your genetic information, and DNA is what we call deoxyribonucleic acid. So genes, as mentioned, those are segments, okay, or portions of your DNA strand. So that is sequence of DNA that codes for a protein and thus determines a trait. So one gene could be for a certain trait, and another gene could be for another trait.
Now, to deepen our understanding regarding the structure that holds our genetic information, which is your chromosome, let's go ahead and take a look on this illustration. So this illustration is not new to everyone. You saw this when you are in grade 8 talking about biology. So from what you've noticed, chromosomes are in pairs. Okay, that's the reason why you've seen here numbers. So numbers, there are numbers here. So chromosomes are in pairs. Okay. So all in all, we have 46 chromosomes. But if we're talking about number of pairs, we have 23 pairs of chromosomes. Now, another thing that you have to remember as a recall, okay, so chromosomes are in pairs because one chromosome here is homologous to another one in this particular pairing. Okay, which means to say, pag sinabi natin homologous, chromosomes are homologous, whatever genes that you can actually see from this one chromosome in this pair, you can actually see that from the other one. Okay, kung ano yun meron dito, yun lang din yung meron doon sa isang chromosome. Okay, homologous, which means same. Okay, now a cell that contains homologous chromosomes are known to be diploid cells. Okay, diploid means two cells. Okay, they are the one holding, okay, homologous chromosomes. And I will no longer further elaborate it because you've learned that when you are in your grade 8 science. Now, we have 23 pairs from 1 to 22nd pair. Okay, these chromosomes are known to be autosomes, or in layman's term, we call it as body chromosomes. And these body chromosomes are responsible for our body characteristics or physical characteristics. Okay, your hair strand, why is it curly or straight and whatnot. Okay, so while the 23rd pair of your chromosome is responsible for our sex. And that's the reason why we call it as gametes or sex chromosomes. So if you are a female organism, talking about humans, you have two X chromosomes in your 23rd pair. Okay? Now, if you are a male organism, human organism, therefore you have one X chromosome and one Y chromosome. Okay? So, from what you've seen here, we can all agree that the sex of the human organism having this chromosome is a male one. Okay? So the main difference between the two sex chromosomes is, okay, the X chromosome is longer than the Y chromosome. So X is responsible for male characteristics, and that is Y rather. Y is responsible for male characteristics. Now X chromosome is responsible for female characteristics. Now, let's focus on the main point of our discussion, which is this structure that you can actually found on in your chromosome, rather, your DNA. This is our main focus for this video recorded discussion. Now, your DNA or your deoxyribonucleic acid is considered to be one of the general types of nucleic acids. So this is a nucleic acid, your DNA. Other than DNA, we have another type of nucleic acid, which is your RNA, your ribonucleic acid. Now for this discussion, I will no longer give emphasis for RNA. So you will learn more about that concept, their differences once you hit grade 10. So dun yun mga anak papalalimin. Okay, for the meantime, our focus is just the DNA alone. Okay, so DNA is a nucleic acid. Okay, a unique molecule. So other than that, from what you've learned earlier, your DNA stores our genetic information. Now, being a nucleic acid, okay, your DNA or your RNA is made up of nucleotides. Okay, maybe you're wondering bakit siya deoxyribonucleic acid. Okay, the name itself. Okay, the reason behind it is due to its composition. Okay, so this is just a schematic diagram of how we represent the structure of a nucleotide. Okay, this is nucleotide. Okay, one nucleotide is known to be a monomer. Okay, and your nucleotide is composed of phosphate group, this circular shape, and this pentagon shape is for your sugar, and the type of sugar for DNA is known to be deoxyribose. Okay, so yung malalim na discussion for this will be tackled once you hit grade 10. Now, this rectangular shape is for the nitrogenous base. So phosphate group plus sugar plus nitrogenous base is the nucleotide. Chain of monomer, chain of nucleotides is the polymer. So longer chain of this monomer is known to be your polymer. Okay, so making it a unique molecule. Okay, so nucleic acid in general is one of the different macromolecules we have or we consume as humans, okay, or we have in our body, or we consume as humans. You've learned that when you are in grade 8 in your digestive system. Okay, now other than nucleic acid, you have their carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids. Okay, so DNA stores our genetic information, a unique molecule made up of nucleotides. Okay, and that nucleotides are joined into long strands, yung polymer na sinasabi ni Sir, by a covalent bonding. Covalent bonding, I'll discuss that once we hit chemistry. Okay? So remember, your DNA is made up of a nucleotides, long chain of nucleotides, and that nucleotides are made up of phosphate group, sugar, and nitrogenous base. Okay, so your nitrogenous bases could be cytosine. This is only for DNA. This works only for DNA. Cytosine, guanine, adenine, thymine. Okay, so further discussion for this nitrogenous bases will be tackled in your grade 10. Okay, now this is also considered to be double helix. So once replication process starts, you would know how double helix happens. Okay, so that will be further intensified soon. For the meantime, what I want you to remember is that DNA is a unique molecule, okay, that stores our genetic information made up of nucleotides, phosphate group plus sugar plus nitrogenous base. And these nitrogenous bases are further subdivided, okay, into purines and pyrimidines. Okay? So, DNA lang muna tayo. For DNA, the nitrogenous bases are cytosine, guanine, adenine, and thymine. Okay? Pairing here for your the pairing for your nitrogenous bases, okay? So remember this, we follow Chargaff's rule. I-discuss din yung mga anak sa grade 10. So yung pairing, in order for us to produce another strand of DNA during replication process, okay, is that your adenine must be paired to thymine. Okay, guanine must be paired to cytosine or vice versa. Okay, kung pwede yung cytosine to guanine, adenine to thymine. Okay, that's the pairing of your nitrogenous bases. So what I want you to do is to remember that pairing. Okay, so double helix siya. Okay, the sugar is deoxyribose. And the pairing must be adenine to thymine, cytosine to guanine. That is your DNA. Now, replication, you've learned this in your grade 8 biology. This is a process of copying or duplicating your DNA strand. Okay, your DNA strand. And this usually happens during interphase in your mitosis. Okay, cell division, wherein specifically S phase. Okay, that's the time that your chromosomes are being synthesized. Kaya nga S phase means synthesis phase. Okay, so that's the time then also na nare-replicate yung inyong DNA in order to produce 2 copies of DNA strands, because that is being transferred to another cell now when it multiplies into 2. Maybe you're recalling those concepts. Okay, replication is a semi-conservative process kasi one strand is used, an old strand is used to produce a new strand. Okay, so old strand means the template for you to produce a new strand. We follow here complementary base pairing. Your adenine must be paired to thymine. Your cytosine must be paired to guanine, or vice versa. Happens when 2 strands separate and producing new complementary strands from old to new strand. That is your replication process. Okay, let's try to apply what you've learned earlier from my discussion for DNA and how we can produce new strand from an old strand. Let's do this activity. So replication again from old to new strand, to new DNA strand. So again, template is the old strand, semi-conservative, in order for us to produce new DNA. So nagsisplit together lang yung DNA molecule natin, the double helix, into 2. One is being used as a template to produce new strand. That will be further intensified yung concept about replication process in your grade 10 science. Now, for the direction, identify the complementary sequence of bases in the other strand of DNA. So our given here are just strand, okay, portion of your DNA strand coming from an old strand. Okay, so yun. Now here, for number 1, we have A, C, CCT, GAG, TCT. So that is the sequence, complementary sequence. For number 2, GCA, AGT, ACC, TGA. So what we're after here is for us to produce new strand using complementary base pairing. Remember, complementary base pairing for DNA is, in terms of replication, is adenine must be paired to thymine. A is to T. Capital A is to capital T. That is the symbol used for adenine and thymine, respectively. Now, for cytosine, capital C, guanine, capital G, so cytosine must be paired to guanine, vice versa. Okay? So, for number 1, we have A. So, therefore, Tion. Okay? A, we have to produce T here. C must be in guanine, T for adenine, so on and so forth. We just have to follow the complementary base pairing. And I know you will all agree that this is the answer for number 1. So we have T, kasi nga, a complementary of A is T, C is G, in this case. So T, complementary is A. So, G to C, A to T, G to C, T to A, C to G, T to A. Okay? So, now for number 2, we have here GCA, AGT, ACC, TGA. So, let's try to produce a new strand using complementary base pairing. A to T, C to G. Okay? So, here's the answer. So, G to C, C to G, A to T, A to T, G to C, T to A to T, C to G, C to G, T to A, G to C, A to T. So again, this happens because of complementary base pairing. Adenine must be paired to thymine. Okay, cytosine must be paired to guanine for your DNA replication process. Okay, now your turn. So try to answer numbers 3 to 5 rather. Pause the video for a while. Then have a scratch paper or any paper and use your pen to try to write your answer via following the complementary base pairing. Now, here's the answer. For number 3, we have A to T, A to T, T to A, G to C, C to G, C to G, A to T, G to C, T to A, G to C, G to C, and T to A. Okay? So, hopefully everyone is having the they got the correct answer as well. Now, for number 4, here's the answer. Now, T to A, C to G, G to C, T to A, C to G, C to G, G to C, T to A, C to G, T to A to T, G to C. So, hopefully everyone is correct for number 4. And for number 5, here's the answer. We have A to T, G to C, C to G, A to T, G to C, G to C, A to T, G to C, A to T, T to A, C to G, and G to C. Now, hopefully is everyone good with this number as well. So again, this is how we can form new strand from an old DNA strand using complementary base pairing. Now, let's go back to think about it question. So the question again is, what might happen to the organism if one of the compositions of DNA was damaged or altered before it will be inherited? Now, this is the time for you to type your answer on the comment section below. If you have a correct answer, then you will get additional score for your recitation. So that's it for today. Hopefully, you learn something from this video recorded discussion and also use the concepts learned to accomplish your activity.